Hey everyone. Today you're joined with some very special guests, and we're going to be talking about an in-person event that's coming up on the 6th of August, which is happening in Albury, New South Wales, and it's called Regenerate. So, Regenerate is a holistic health summit where we're going to shed light on modern diseases, including the causes and the solutions to overcoming these. We're going to have there are three pillars of Regenerate: circadian and quantum health, low carb / animal based or carnivore diets, and regenerative farming. So we've brought together four big characters who are absolute leaders in their field, who do not hold back their punches. They've done the research. They're not afraid to tell the truth. And today we're going to get some insight on the sort of talks and presentations they're going to be giving. So now, Max, I'll flick to you. Do you want to explain a bit about what people can expect at Regenerate Albury?
Yeah, thanks, Simon. So we're super happy and super excited to offer this in-person event. The idea behind the conference is to really bring together these critical areas of health that are essentially lifestyle pillars, I believe, of good health. And the intention is to have an event where people can come and find out what they can do to basically take charge of their health, to optimize their lifestyle through their diet, through their light environment, through their food sourcing, and make connections with people in these three areas. So the event will kick off on Saturday, the 5th of August in the morning. And at 9 a.m., we're going to have a farm tour at Jacob Wolki's farm. This is a regenerative farm. He's got an incredibly efficient, incredibly productive farm going on his 100 acres. There's chickens, there's laying hens, there's sheep, there's regenerative beef. There's so much going on. I'm going to be coming along for that farm tour. Jake and I like to have a bit of a back and forth, and we discuss how human health and ecosystem health are all interrelated. So please come along. That'll be from 9 a.m. Later that day, we're going to have a welcome dinner in Albury. The venue is still to be determined, but that's going to be a really intimate night. It's a great opportunity to meet all the speakers in person. There's going to be some really, really tasty food. So really stay tuned for that. That'll be a separate ticketed event, but we'll keep you in the loop about that. And then on Sunday is the main event. From 9 a.m., we're going to have each one of us, Dr. Anthony Chafee, myself, Dr. Jalal Khan, and Jake Wolki, speaking on the topics of circadian health, carnivore eating, and regenerative farming. We're also going to have a very exciting roundtable discussion on Nguni farming and regenerative farming with Nguni cattle. We've got Edwin Rouse, who's an expert Nguni breeder from South Africa, who's made an incredible journey over here. So everything is being covered. We're going to have a barbecue of Wolki Farm meat, and there's going to be lots of back and forth. There's going to be lots of talking, and it's going to be a whole heap of incredible discussion. So that's what's on the table, Simon.
Awesome. Thanks, Max. Now to get a sample from everybody, a little teaser, a little tidbit on about what you're going to speak about at Regenerate Albury. So first cab off the rank, Dr. Anthony Chafee, practicing neurosurgical registrar, host of the Plant Free MD podcast and YouTube series, former professional rugby player, and longtime carnivore. Dr. Chafee, what can we expect from you at Regenerate?
Well, just going through the facts, evidence, and science behind what Max was talking about, which is how to restore your own health and take back your own health and not be reliant on the medical system and other interventions, medications, supplements, anything like that. So how to just be healthy. The natural state of humanity and human beings is one of health. The natural state of animals in the entire planet is one of health. And yet we are the sickest, most diseased, and most suffering species out there in respects to our health. So it's something that is abnormal, and it's something that we can show is abnormal in the data and the literature. So we'll be talking about that, and then just how to get healthy and not have to deal with all that in the first place, and just get on with your life.
Love it. Thanks, man. Dr. Jalal Khan, you are a practicing dentist, quantum health clinician with an interest in root cause solutions to modern health challenges and optimizing pediatric facial development. Welcome, and what can we expect from your talk, Matt?
Glad to be here, gents. What I'll be talking about is more of the quantum side of things, and that being really light. the light that we can see and the light that we can't see, and how things like non-native electromagnetic frequencies and blue light can start to mess up or confuse how our mitochondria work. Because whilst Dr. Anthony is going to be talking about the inputs, which one of the main inputs is food and a higher protein, higher fat diet compared to carbs, the mitochondria is the stage, right? And so we need the stage to be operating optimally. So I'll be explaining about how light has a role to play in determining the optimal mitochondrial function. So if we have the engine purring like a Ferrari engine, then things just sound beautiful, don't they? So that's what I'll be getting into.
Oh yeah, awesome. Thanks, Jalal. And Jacob Wolki, you are a regenerative farmer, entrepreneur, operator of Wolki Farm, and a pioneer of regenerative farming in the Albury area, and a particular expert in the high-functional Nguni cow. Mate, what can we expect from you on your home turf?
Well, I'm really excited about putting the best foot forward to talk to people about not only eating meat and a protein-based diet, but quality meat. You know, not all meats are equal. And I really believe that if we take some time to step back and really consider what animal welfare is, you know, I gave somebody the example today that I've got a friend who thinks he gives his dog beautiful animal welfare because he leaves the food bowl full all the time. His dog's morbidly obese. The thing's got its gut dragging on the ground, you know, so this dog's pigging out 24/7 on a high carb diet. You know, where in nature do dogs operate a hammer mill and scoff down wheat all day? It's just a nonsense. So even our concept of what animal welfare is wrong. And I really believe through my learning and experimenting on the farm that if you can look at the animal and identify its natural expression and then pay respect to that, pay tribute to that by letting it act in its fullness the most, letting the cow be a cow, letting the pig be a pig, you actually end up with really healthy, thriving ecosystems. The environment loves it. And then you can have a farming-based system that's not reliant on chemicals, which ends up producing the healing food that we're so passionate about bringing to our community. So it's all about animals for me. There's lots of different aspects to health, and this is the tastiest one.
I love it. And looking forward to the farm tour on Saturday morning as well. That'd be awesome, man. And finally, Dr. Max Gulhane, practicing GP registrar, host of the Regenerative Health podcast, advocate of holistic approaches to optimizing health and reversing metabolic disease. Max, what can we expect from you?
Yeah, thanks, Simon. So I guess I'm going to be presenting about a couple of these big themes that I've explored on my podcast. And again, to echo Anthony, I'm throughout my interviews and throughout my medical practice, my medical education, I'm seeing so many problems that simply aren't being addressed by the solutions that are being offered from a mainstream medicine and a pharmaceutical-based medical approach. And so much of suffering that I see, and avoidable suffering and a slow progression into chronic disease, which is the trajectory for so many people who I see in my clinic, in my GP clinic, can be avoided. I guess the best strategy to I guess avert that trajectory and get onto optimal health is something that I'm very interested in. In my talk, I'll be exploring metabolic health. I'll be exploring visceral fat, the really dangerous fat that's sitting deep inside our abdomen, and I'll be explaining how diet, but also the light environment, impacts the likelihood of developing visceral fat and becoming metabolically unwell. Because as many of you and many of the listeners know, the predictor or the risk factor for becoming infirm, becoming unwell, getting all these chronic diseases, whether it's heart disease, cancer, dementias, all of these diseases of civilization, is a function of metabolic health. It's a function of how much visceral fat you have, and offering people solutions involving their lifestyle, involving their diet, involving their exercise, involving their light environment, that are simple. They're not strenuous. You don't need drugs. You don't need a Ozempic. You don't need all these fancy crutches. You just need highly effective advice that actually works. So those are the kind of themes that I'll be talking about, and I'll be also linking it into the regenerative farming aspect, because like Anthony, I'm advocating for a high meat consumption, and I think that's where optimal health lies, with a high proportion of animal foods in the diet. So regenerative farming is a critical part of that, as we help to source not only the most nutrient dense foods, but the most ethically raised foods. And that is why what Jake's doing is so critical to this picture.
Great, thanks, Max. All right, well, what are you waiting for? Grab a ticket, come and join us at Regenerate Albury on the 6th of August. Make a weekend of it. Join us on Saturday for the tour of Jake's farm and the intimate dinner with these amazing speakers on the Saturday night as well. It's going to be a lot of fun in a fantastic location. So come along and say good day.
I was visiting Jake in the butchery today. He's got a massive amount of high quality animal food stacked into the fridge. He's sending it overseas. And he showed me, interstate, and he showed me an Nguni carcass. So there was the regenerative cows that he's using at the moment, the Nguni. One was butchered, and it had an amazing subcutaneous fat cap with not much intramuscular marbling, and it looked absolutely delicious. So pretty excited to taste that meat.
Yeah,
I think the message behind the animal welfare as well that Jake pushes is really important. So if I come from a quantum angle, if you have a happy animal, that animal has a happy energy about it and a happy light about it, which is stored inside of the tissues. So if you are consuming a piece of meat which has good energy that is stored inside of it, good light that is stored inside of it, that's something that we take in and we absorb that. And so one of the big things for me from a regenerative agriculture perspective in terms of my learning journey has been that it's not just about the clean meat and the healthy meat, it's also about the animal welfare as well. So I think that's beautiful.
It's been an ancient truism that we need to look after our animals. Like we've known this forever. Every large world religion has practices and doctrine and procedures. Like, I send my chickens down to an abattoir in Melbourne that does kosher kills once a week, and any chicken that's slaughtered under the kosher observation, which is the Jewish observation, if there's any blemish in that chicken that could lead the inspector to believe that it was sick or it suffered, it gets discarded, not fit for human consumption. And that's just not something that our sort of Western mindset has taken into account with our food production at all. It's all about maximum production per square meter, full stop, the end. Not all foods are equal. And, these animals are doing the greatest sacrifice. They deserve to have good lives while they're on the farm, being farmed.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing too, because, people do vote with their pocketbook as well. And people that are interested in their own health generally are interested in where they're getting their food source from. They're conscientious about this. There's a lot of vegans and vegetarians that turn carnivore because of the health issues that they have amassed through that way of eating. Is simply not sustainable, and at least not forever anyway. And so when they come to this, they say, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I need to make sure that this is going to be done the right way. And I fully agree with that. I mean, I don't want to have an animal that was suffered. I mean, I don't travel in Asia quite a lot because exactly that, because they have quite atrocious, rules on how they can mistreat animals. And in fact, as strange as it sounds, I almost exclusively go to McDonald's when I'm traveling in places like that, because I actually know, because I've spoken to ranchers and farmers in other countries, that McDonald's goes to certain areas in that country, in that location, so that they can source locally. They don't just buy from the markets and they just source from people there. They hire ranchers and farmers to grow the wheat they want, the different crops they want in the way they want it, and raise the animals, the certain kinds of animals, and grow and raise them the way they want them, and process them the way they want them processed, right? So, and they check. And I was talking to a rancher in Ireland. He said it was really annoying because they do check and they're on his ass all the time. And I sort of asked him, I was like, well, they pay really well, so you do it, but it's just like, it's my ranch, it's my business. Like, I should be able to do whatever I want the way I want. In my head, I'm just like, good, I'm glad they check on your ass. Like, I'm really happy about that. And so when you go to a country like that may not have the same rules and regulations that Australia, US, UK, Canada, and other Western countries would have, because you go to jail if you mistreat your animals, and rightly so. If you go to these places that don't have those rules in place, you have no safeguard that those animals are treated well. So I don't tend to eat out in places or buy meat that I feel a bit dodgy about. And so I tend to eat at McDonald's, because I at least know that McDonald's is going to check on these guys. I at least know that there are checks in place, and there are people there that have that same sort of, ethical, conscientious mindset on how you treat animals. And they will go and look, and they will go and find out. And if they're abusing and mistreating these animals, I hope that they would do something about it. At least they do in other countries anyway. And, that's something that I think we can all get behind. These animals, we protect them. We fix them when they're hurt. We heal them when they're sick. We feed them, and then they feed us. And that's the deal. And if you don't get to break that deal, you don't get to hurt these things, you don't get to mistreat them. And, if you do that properly, then everyone wins.
I think the parallel, there's incredible parallel between the disconnect and the ignorance that people have for their food and the ignorance that they have for their health. The amount that people don't understand when they buy that chicken from Woolworths, when they buy that confined fed pork from the supermarket, they just simply don't understand what that animal has gone through to be delivered to that plate. And this is the same person that is unaware that eating porridge and Weet Bix every morning has made him diabetic and is continuing to push him further down that path towards leg amputation, dialysis, blindness from these consequences of chronic disease. So I feel, and that's why I'm so excited about bringing you guys together for this conference, is because there's a collective ignorance and blindness in our respective fields, whether that's farming as Jake's, whether that's medicine as Anthony and I, and health and Jalal. And I guess it's our role, or I see it as one of our roles, to be educators and to show people how things possibly could be, in order to facilitate and optimize not only the health of the animals, but the health of the humans who are going to be consuming those animals.
For sure. Something that we didn't mention when we were speaking before is that at the event, we're going to be having a massive barbecue of Wolki meat. So we're sourcing local, regeneratively raised meat from Jake Wolki, and we're going to be barbecuing up for everybody, included in your ticket, and having a big communal meal. So that'll be a great opportunity to mingle with other people, enjoy the meat, and really immerse yourself in the day.
Sounds like we could just order Macca's.
Yeah, I don't know if they do the regeneratively raised one though.
No, not
well.
Quite.
McDonald's in America actually hired Temple Grandin, who's a worldwide celebrity, really, in the agriculture space. She is known for revolutionizing stockyards and abattoirs. She can get into these environments and think like an animal. She gets down on her hands and knees, and what are they looking at? And McDonald's have a lot of their own slaughter yards in America. They do it all internally. And disregarding animal welfare, it all of a sudden became so much more efficient, because if you're not fighting the animals, if you can lead the animals instead of poking the animals, there's big gains there. So it was, when I found that out, I found that very interesting, because she's a real character. There's a film on her. If you haven't seen it, I recommend you go check it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the thing that people don't understand as well about animal welfare, is that even if you are, stone cold prick and you don't care anything about those animals, that's your wealth, that's your livelihood. And, if you don't treat those animals well, they don't thrive, they may die, and you lose money, and you may go out of business. And so you may be exclusively worried about your own self-interest, but if you are, you will take care of that animal as well as you can, so that it is as healthy as it can. They have as many babies as they can, they grow up big and strong, so that you can sell them. Like that's the whole idea. So even if you care nothing about the welfare of these animals, it is in your best interest to make sure that they have a good life. And that is by and large what we see in Western countries, even in places that aren't doing regeneratively raised farms, which I think is definitely the best and a better way of doing it for the animals as well as the land, and the quality of the meat as well. Because that's not in question. There's a significant improvement of nutrient content, nutrient density in regeneratively raised meat. So even if you don't care anything about the animal, it's still in your best interest to treat them well, and that's something that people miss.
There's a sorry, go on, Jake. You can say something.
Well, I was just while we're riffing on welfare, I was just going to expand a little bit on what Dr. Anthony just said, because there'd almost not be a farmer in the world that would consider himself giving his animals bad welfare. Like, you know, like we were just told, that it's their investment, it's their livelihood, they have to deal with these animals every day. But what is their concept of welfare is what I'm going to be unboxing a little bit for everybody. Is our idea of welfare making sure that the feed we're delivering to our animals every day is laced with subtherapeutic antibiotics, so we can be on the front foot and keep them healthy. And if we get slight weight gains out of that, that's our win. Or are we going to have a bit of a backbone and go training our animals to be drug addicts? Doesn't sound like the best long-term solution for their health or ours. So what can we do about their environment and their inputs to make sure they're not needing these subtherapeutic antibiotics put into their food? So, you know, or you want to keep your, I know people that give their cows diesel, they lick a little bit of diesel, which helps them deal with their bloat. So they'll eat a clover-rich diet and they start to bloat up, and all the gases are fermenting inside them, and it can kill a cow. And so if you put a bucket with some diesel out in the paddock, they'll lick it and it makes all their insides rubbery, and they'll just fart it all out. Or you can get in the car and you can chase them up and down the paddock and take them for a jog, and they'll push it all out themselves, you know? So you could think you're doing the right thing by the animal by giving it diesel because you're solving its ailment. But the real question is, why is it in that position in the first place? You know, what proactive measurements could you have taken? And what historical knowledge do we have as a species? How would we have dealt with that 200 years ago, 500 years ago, 10,000 years ago? Because it's not like we had no idea. You know, you go back long enough and everyone has a farming pedigree. So I find these conversations lots of fun, and I look forward to turning a few stones over.
I mean, yeah, the crux of what you're saying, Jake, is that what is ancestrally appropriate? What did we do before we had this massive apparatus of pharmaceutical medication and industrial agricultural chemicals? Because I think if we use that lens and that perspective and apply it to both health and agriculture, we arrive at the ideal approach. And what you're doing, what the regenerative farming movement is doing with moving cattle regularly, it's mimicking a predator-prey environment. It's mimicking what would happen on the Great Plains of the US, what would happen in Africa. That is what offers the best thing for the cow and the land. What Jalal's offer, Dr. Jalal is suggesting from a quantum and circadian point of view, is simply re-establishing those behaviors that we would have evolved doing, which is grounding almost 195% of the time, you know, being in natural bodies of water, being regulated constantly by the sun. And then what Anthony, you're talking about is a human diet. What would we have had access to? What is the most nutrient dense food? What has an absence of toxins that would inhibit the digestion of these nutrients? And it's animal meat and fat. So I think I really like the ancestral and evolutionary perspective, because I think it really gives us answers if we follow that logic through.
Jalal, is this a sunglasses free event?
This is a sunglasses free event. And for anybody that attends with sunglasses but throws them out, I'll offer them a free checkup and clean at my clinic.
There you go. We're offering so much value.
Well, why don't you tell us about why sunglasses are harmful, Jalal? Because people have read on the internet that might not be a good idea, but give us the scientific explanation.
Look, I understand why people like to wear sunglasses. A, it could look cool, but B, they've got to protect the eyes from the sun. But what we must understand is that the sun is a source of all energy on this earth. And when we receive UV light in through the eyes, it actually cleaves a protein inside of us called POMC to produce something called melanin. And we lay down more melanin inside our eye as a result of UV light coming into the eye. But what we also do is we lay down more melanin on our skin in response to UV light coming in through the eye. And what the beauty about melanin is that it's actually what we call a black hole pigment. And so it can absorb all frequencies of light. So we actually get better at absorbing UV light when we have more melanin in our skin and in our eye. So the best sunscreen is actually to lay down more melanin. And the best way to do that is to responsibly expose your eyes and your skin to UV light. And there's a way to do that, because you can't just go from zero sun exposure, which is what most Australians are like at the moment, straight into 100 kilometers an hour, 2 p.m. UV light in the middle of the day, but you work your way up towards that. So then you start to build that melanin solar callus to be able to handle UV light. But melanin is critical. I might touch on that in my talk. And I also just wanted to add as well, why should someone make the effort to come over to Albury from Sydney or Melbourne? Because there's always an excuse to not come. It's a bit of a drive. It's 3 hours, it's 5 hours. But the reason why is that you actually get to see where the food is coming from. You get to shake the hand of the farmer. You get to understand the protocols and the processes that Jake has in place at Wolki Farm. And there's, as a health clinician, there have been two seminal moments in my career that have been complete paradigm shifts. One of those was understanding the importance of light, but the second was shaking Jake's hand and understanding where my food was coming from. And I remember coming back from meeting Jake in February, and I've got the hairs on the back of my neck still standing up now, just talking about it and reminiscing about that moment when I really understood, okay, the food that we are eating is not healthy. We need to go back farm to plate. We need to understand, we need to meet our farmers. And that is a key aspect to the tripod or the four-legged chair of health.
Jake, are you going to be offering free handshakes at the event?
Handshakes are plenty. Bring it on.
Perfect.
Yeah, I was talking to an agronomist a couple episodes ago who I actually met at one of Jake's farm tours, a very nice guy called David Bushell. He was explaining to me, and he's got a regenerative perspective after coming from conventional agronomy, and the parallels between a conventionally practicing doctor and a conventionally practicing agronomist in terms of their use of essentially chemicals is incredible. And he realized that what we were doing year after year is spraying more and more Roundup on the same area of crop to get the same effect. So you've got a diminishing efficacy of this Roundup crop. They were spraying 500 mils per unit of area, and now they're spraying 2.5 liters. And not only that, they're repeatedly applying this herbicide to their crops. So it was his kind of come to Jesus moment when he realized that this is a futile quest. This is obviously not where optimal cropping lies. And we talked in depth, and he made a lot of points. And Anthony, this would be relevant to you and Jalal about canola. And canola is essentially the most evolutionarily failed crop in that it's like nature doesn't want it to exist. It's been selectively bred from rapeseed. If you don't apply all these succession of chemicals to it, it will die. And then once it's been harvested, then it goes to this industrial processing to get canola oil. But the other interesting point that he made was that the turnaround time between spraying these crops and then cutting them and sending them to market is ambiguous at most. And there can be periods of time where the grass can be sprayed and then cut and sent to the dairy feed to be fed to dairy cows. And I believe it was 24 hours. Don't quote me exactly, but it really raised a point that a friend of all of ours, Dr. Pran Yoganathan, has talked about, which is glyphosate, and the fact that if we're not eating regeneratively, if we don't know where our foods come from, like buying from Jake, we're probably consuming a degree of glyphosate residue in these commodity crops, whether that's canola, wheat, or potentially even dairy. And I'd love to be able to do some testing for that. But I thought that was a really interesting point.
I think the other point as well about all of this GMA processed food, GMO food and processed food as well, is that this food, because it's GMO, it actually carries less light of the sun. And so when you are eating processed food that carries less light, you then need to eat more food in order to get the same amount of light inside of you. This is the quantum perspective behind processed foods, as well as the fact that because these foods don't grow properly under sunlight, and because of their processing, they are very, very high in deuterium. And deuterium is something that really destroys the mitochondria. We lose a mitochondria every 4.2 seconds because of deuterium. And so when we have our tissues laden with deuterium because of the garbage that we are eating, we are basically signing ourselves up for chronic disease. And from a processed food perspective, for me, the story is less light and high in deuterium, and the effects that has on the mitochondria.
Anthony, it makes me think of our mythical 13-year-old dairy cow that we will purchase one day. Maybe Jake can help us with that.
Yeah, the older cows. Yeah, older cows. I don't know, but they just taste amazing.
I've got to duck off. Is that all right, though?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Great to meet you. Great to meet you.
Yeah, see you, Joel.
We'll see you on August the 6th, 5th. I'll come down the day before.
To the farm tour.
See you,
to shake Jake's hand, obviously.
Yeah.
Yes.
I want to cuddle.
See you guys.
See you, man.
See you, man.
Yeah.
Oh, that looks better.
Yeah.
That does look better.
Yeah. Best I've done is 10-year-old cow, and that was amazing. Yeah. That was unreal. Jake, if you have a cow coming up that you're gonna cull from the herd, it's like 20 or something like that. Let me know. I'll take it.
I'm actually just about to go through and process a bunch of my mamas in the paddock that are the big old shorthorns. There'll be enormous yields out of them, and they're ranging sort of between 8 and 11 years old. The oldest I get would be picking up from the abattoirs, not from the abattoir, from the dairy farmers. I've had a 16-year-old Jersey. Obviously, there's a little trade-off with getting the animals from the dairies because they are fed a bit of a grain mix diet. Just because of their output, they need the energy going in. But I normally buy them and grass finish them on my farm anywhere from the quickest I've ever turned one out is 4 months. Sometimes they're on my farm for years because I still try to breed them. So it could be multiple years on our property still. But It's sensational meat, the purebred Jersey.
Yeah, I bet. Especially when it's that old. Have you had one that's that old?
Yeah, I've eaten 16-year-old Jersey, and it offends some people. And when you say like, what's wrong with it? They say it's so beefy. We've been.
It tastes too good. That's
right.
That's just not right.
Well, we've been trained to expect a diet of nothingness. If Matthew Evans wrote a book called On Eating Meat, and he got some of the internal notes of the factory chicken farms and the genetics, their tasting notes they were striving towards in their genetics. And one of the tasting notes that they wanted was bland. They were actually selecting for blandness. If we think back in time, chicken used to be the flavor. Like you have chicken flavored chips, you use chicken stock in your food. Chicken was the flavor. Now you go to your big box supermarket or your local butcher, it's all marinated. There's a honey soy one, there's a peri-peri chicken, there's your, Mexican barbecue, whatever it is, because they know if it's bland, it doesn't offend anybody. It can appeal to everyone. That's one of the ways they've taken chicken from the least eaten meat to the most eaten meat in about 50 years. And they can actually just make it a medium for flavor. It has no flavor. So when I sell my beef or my chicken, and people goes, oh, geez, that was really like quite a different flavor. I said, well, explain it to me. Well, your chicken's just really chickeny. Or your beef is really beefy. That's what they come back with. And I'm singing from the altar. I'm singing from the mountaintops. That's exactly what we're going for. And it doesn't have to be everything for everyone. But, but people that consume a heavy meat diet, they end up craving it because their bodies, their body's getting wired on it. Like, we want that. Give us more of that. That's what it should be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but those are the nutrients, right? So that's what you're tasting. That beefy flavor that says, hey, this tastes good. Those are the different varied nutrients that our tongue is recognizing and saying, hey, these are good nutrients, get those in you. So if it's more concentrated, if it has a higher concentration of beefy flavor, that means there's a higher concentration of nutrients. So you're just tasting that. So, I have no doubt that your beef and chicken and eggs taste much more rich and strong in that regard, because they are going to be having a much higher concentration of nutrients. And that's generally what you see in older animals as well. And I mean, that's exactly what you want. I mean, I'm offended by people that want bland chicken. Like, that's disgusting. Like, why the hell? Don't eat chicken then if you don't want it to taste like chicken. Certainly don't eat beef. Don't ruin it for the rest of us, monsters.
It's on your point of the older animal. It reminds me of some anthropological evidence of hunter-gatherers favoring the older, fatter animal. And this goes into a topic that Jake and we've talked a little bit online on Twitter, which is, do we want to be consuming ruminant meat with fat inside it? Do we want to be consuming ruminant meat with intramuscular marbling? And look, I don't know what you think, Anthony, but from my point of view, I think the most healthy meat has a healthy subcutaneous fat cap, like what you'd find on bison or what you would find on an Nguni cow that's just fully grass-fed browsing. But rather than a Wagyu that's been sitting in a feedlot eating glyphosate-laden grain and has developed a whole bunch of intramuscular marbling. So I don't know what you think about that.
No, I'm 100% with you. I would way rather have the sub-Q fat than the marbled fat. When I got my 10-year-old cow, unfortunately, I didn't think about it in time to tell the butcher, like, do not trim an ounce of fat off that thing. They're used to just what everyone wants is just a little thin strip of fat, and oh, fat's bad, throw it away. So they I don't know how many dozens of pounds of fat that they threw away, 100 plus pounds of fat that they threw away, which really, really bothers me. But it still was amazing. It tasted absolutely fantastic. I didn't care that it didn't have any marbling. It had an amazing flavor, and I felt just energized. I was just like, normally when I eat a lot of meat, I'll be lethargic, naturally lethargic, just sort of like, oh, okay, that's it. When I would eat this stuff, I just feel like, I just go kill a buffalo with my bare hands and do it, and and eat it. It was just like this is everything. And I did a taste test between prime New York strip in the US. So, grade them differently in the US, but so prime is like the highest grade, highest marbling, everything like that. And so tasted amazing. And I had the 10-year-old cow, no marbling at all, just a little strip of fat on the outside, and same cut. And I tried the prime cut first. It was amazing. I was like, God, I love this diet. I just love just eating just meat all day. This is amazing. Love this thing. It was great. Took a bite of the 10-year-old cow, and it was amazing too. I'm like, God, this is so good too. This is amazing. And I just sort of had another bite and another bite. Then I had another bite, and I'm like, well, maybe we'll go back to the other one. Let's see what the difference is. Couldn't taste it. Couldn't taste it at all. There was no beef flavor whatsoever. It was completely drowned out. And it wasn't that the older cow was overpowering to me. Like, I loved that taste. It was just overpowering as compared to the prime, 2-year-old cow or whatever the hell it was. And all I could taste was the richness, because it had more fat. So I had the rich sort of flavor. That was it. It just sort of tasted like I was eating, just fat. I had no idea I was eating meat. And that was the difference. And I ate much less of the older cow, and I felt much better. And, I can only imagine that, that's because of the nutrient density. Our bodies chase nutrients. They don't chase calories. And, in that struggle for nutrients, we get a lot of excess energy that we don't necessarily need. And people end up putting on weight and destroying their metabolic health. So, you eat, high density nutrition, you don't have to eat as much, and you feel better, and you are healthier.
Yeah, and it reminds me of a test that I did when I was eating Nguni, regeneratively raised Nguni up in Queensland from Eastwell Farms, that's where I originally found this breed, this African cattle breed. And you look at the different at the steaks, the store-bought Angus porterhouse and the Nguni regenerative porterhouse, the depth of deep red flavor, deep red color of that regenerative steak it was just like night and day. And it was obvious to everyone which one tasted better. And as you say, Anthony, the regenerative one didn't have a lot of intramuscular marbling at all. It had a bit of a fat cap, but it tasted so much better. And, just as we say that I think the key point is that the processing, the human intervention, the processing is the problem. And when you process the food, even plant food or animal food, you're going to get a suboptimal product. And as you mentioned, it's just devoid of nutrients, relatively speaking. So perhaps you're even eating more just because your body's expecting more micronutrients that you're just simply not getting. Whereas you can afford to eat less when every bite is so satiating. And it really, I think maybe, Jake and I are promoting Nguni, but part of it is also, I think, realizing or making people think that, hang on, store-bought beef is, it's process. It's almost like, not to get too high horsed about it, but it is a form of processed food. And then we take it even a step back to think that, what about the breed? The fact that the breed has been selectively bred over the past 100 years, like a Hereford or an Angus, isn't that just the same as the rapeseed that's been selectively bred to become canola? And Jake can tell us about why that animal is subpar from a animal husbandry point of view. But I'd like to see herds of Nguni regenerative farming all over Australia, and everyone eating this really, really high quality, fully grass-fed meat. That's what I think is a great goal.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Well, gentlemen, I've got a 2.5-year-old Nguni animal hanging in my cool room. I'll put some on ice, and we can all share some. We'll sneak some to the side, and I want your feedback on it, because it's the first purebred animal that we've processed.
Yeah,
Oh,
wow,
nice.
that sounds awesome.
Yeah, very good. That'll be great.
Perfect. 1 month time, we'll dig into that. That sounds great.
I should just leave it hanging.
Yeah.
Yeah, may as well age it, dry it out.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right,
Cool.
let's wrap it up there. So Matt, so Jake
Thank
can put
you.
his kids to bed.
Yeah, they're just about to get home. She's around the corner at her mum's at the moment, so
Oh, nice.
they'll come barreling in the door any minute and tag, you're it.
Yeah.
Two kids or three?
Still just two. Yeah, my wife's due in a couple of days with our third,
wow.
so it's we're on watch.
That's
Yeah,
exciting.
she's gonna come in, just throw the kids at you, just like, yours.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, she's really.
done.
My wife's she's a marvel, actually. Like, even the way I was watching her the other day, she's full term with her third, and watching the way that she gets up off the couch and takes a couple steps and then bends over and picks up a couple toys, and just I've watched a lot of pregnant women move around, and they're big and they're heavy, and they're sore and they're tired and they're aching and twisting. You know what I'm talking about. You've seen women struggle with it. And you wouldn't even know. Like, if you were walking behind my wife down the street, you wouldn't even know she was pregnant. And her range of movement and her energy is just incredible. The second child, her energy really got hit very hard. But this third gestation, we did, what was it? It was almost 6 months, completely strict carnivore.
Nice.
Basically beef and seafood only. And we had
Awesome.
our easiest conception we've ever had in 3 pregnancies. And she sailed through with none of the textbook iron deficiencies or anything else that just plague women all throughout our society. She's just had this fairy tale pregnancy so far. So we're really looking forward to rounding that off with a beautiful birth and beautiful baby.
Well, I'm sure you will. I mean, think about that too. Like, why are we the only animals on Earth that just get absolutely destroyed with pregnancy? You have pregnant gazelles, getting away from pregnant lionesses. So you got to live, and you either have to avoid predation or you have to kill and get your meat. It's one thing for a pride of lions, maybe only some of them are pregnant at a time, but what about like a cougar or panther or leopard? They're solo hunters, and so they're hunting while fully pregnant, and then they get a kill and they give birth and then get up and go do it again. I mean, there's no downtime. And so if you're going around with swollen ankles, the back pain, like, oh my God, slow down, you're migrating too fast, you're dead. You're just dead. And so that I've always found that very, very strange and again, just abnormal. Like, we shouldn't be this unhealthy. It should, pregnancies are going to be a trying time, but they shouldn't be debilitating, because if they were debilitating, you'd be dead. And so something's wrong,
Sure.
something's wrong with that. And if you're, puking for hours every day for, 40 weeks, something's wrong. I had a friend of mine who had that. She had hyperemesis for 32 weeks, and she was just projectile vomiting for hours a day, every day. And this was when I was first sort of getting into this and posting a lot on Facebook. And she just sort of saw that and just went like, you know what he's saying makes sense. I'm going to give it a try. She just stopped eating plants, and she was already eating meat, but she stopped eating the rest of it. Like that, morning sickness stopped that day. And she had a completely seamless pregnancy after that. Next 2 kids, perfectly fine. She's actually just pregnant with her 3rd child now. So that'll be the 2nd pregnancy since then. Absolutely no issues. She is, she's still doing all her normal stuff, taking care of 2 kids, working out, doing all her normal things, and with none of the typical problems that you would see in pregnancy as well.
Yeah, I talked to Dr. Kiltz about that, and it was his opinion that hyperemesis gravidarum is simply response to ingestion of plant foods.
I think so.
That the body doesn't want to consume for the fact that they contain a bunch of toxins to a fetus that is essentially very vulnerable, especially in the first trimester when organogenesis, organs are forming, the sex is being determined. It's a very, very, very vulnerable period. Look, another hypothesis is that it's a B vitamin deficiency, and we treat women with hyperemesis with B6 as the first line to ameliorate nausea symptoms. So whatever kind of school of thought, and those are the kind of ideas that I think kind of drive hyperemesis. If you put a woman on a high meat-based diet prior to pregnancy, I think there's a good reason to show anecdotally that they're less likely to get first trimester nausea and vomiting. And Jake, you had a customer, I remember you telling me that she had severe hyperemesis vomiting, and the only thing she could stomach was raw eye fillet from the Wolki butchery. And
Wow.
And that's not an advice to the listeners to only consume raw meat, but if the alternative is wasting away and potentially losing that pregnancy, or taking a truckload of medications, and you can get severe hyperemesis that needs hospitalization. You're on steroids, by that point. So if it can be cured with high quality grass fed meat, then I think that's a win on all fronts.
Yeah, she had an amazing testimony where it went from projectile vomiting to being full of energy and feeling great, and it was just the catalyst was raw eye fillet. And we as a society, we've lost the food intelligence to handle these products in our kitchens and in our butcheries with the care that they need. You can get listeria from lettuce. There's nothing innately wrong with meat. It's not like meat poisons you. It's meat that's treated really bad. Like out the back of my house, near the back door, there's a shoe cabinet, which used to be a meat safe. We used to take big pieces of meat and put it in a wooden box with fly screen and just let it sit outside for weeks at a time. We're disconnected from these ancient systems of how we used to store and feed ourselves. And I would probably argue that our bodies would probably need a little bit of time to catch up to digesting a lot of that as well. We're probably lacking the vigor and the microbiome to back it up. One other thing before I jump off, Jensen, Doctor, this might be interesting just based off the back of the conversation of the pregnancies and the gestation, is in farming, when you have lactating animals in the field, it's almost like the race is on to keep body condition on these animals, because if they're good mums, and they've got vigorous babies, whether the ewe has twin lambs or the mum's got a big vigorous calf, those progeny will suck all the body condition off those mothers, and they'll be fighting for their own nutrients. There's no mothers in nature getting obese while they're lactating, and that's something that you can observe time and time again in our society. Is that the women will put on a little bit of weight through gestation because they're being told to take it easy and not go too hard, and a little bit of comfort eating and whatever it is. There's no judgment here. This is purely observation. And then the lactating starts, the breastfeeding, which we know is hard work. I've watched my wife do it twice now, and boom, they blow up. And you don't see that in wild. That's not a natural thing to happen.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's just another example of not eating the right thing and not being in the proper condition. It's again abnormal. It's not, if you're getting so deconditioned by pregnancy and child rearing that you're slamming on another 50% of weight and you can't run away or chase or hunt or anything like that, like you're in trouble. You're in a lot of trouble. And people will say, well, maybe it's just because they are out there running away and migrating and chasing things down and hunting, so they're getting exercise. But, you know, animals in the zoo don't get fat and overweight when they're going through this either, you know, because they're being fed the right thing. That's why they have signs at the zoo that say, don't feed the animals, because it makes them very sick if they don't eat their natural food. And then no one realizes that that applies to us as well. And then no one tells them what our natural food is. They say, oh, it's lettuce and greens and this and that because something from, you know, the Seventh-day Adventist Church and the WHO said so. And it's like, okay, did any of those plants exist 50,000 years ago? Well, then shut up. Then that's obviously not what we're supposed to eat if it didn't even exist when we were coming about. Couldn't be.
I think about that problem, and Jake, we've talked about this offline. I really think it's a lack of really high quality nutrient dense animal fat and protein, because in the absence of those key nutrients, people are driven to overconsume. See you, Jake. To overconsume processed foods. So you can see how that creates this situation where you're highly you're putting on a heap of weight. You've got a high insulin level because you're constantly eating refined carbs and seed oils, and that is how someone could, I guess, put on so much weight despite doing a metabolically demanding act, which is breastfeeding. And when we're eating protein and high quality fat, we're the lady is more likely to be in ketosis, more able to mobilize the stored fat that they put on healthily during that pregnancy. So yeah, that's my 2 cents worth. But I definitely think it's the dietary point of view the dietary inconsistency is key there.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Cool.
All right, let's wrap up there, lads. That was really good.
Yeah. I gotta run
All
too.
right.
Awesome. All right, guys. Good to see
See
you
you,
guys.
see you, Anthony.
Thanks, everyone. See you in Aubrey.
And